I'm really excited to have Pat Martin, who put together the Renewable Energy Track for Radically Rural. So we're going to talk about Radically Rural, the conference that's coming to Keene in September, and the real exciting track sessions for the brand new 2019 Renewable Energy Track. So thank you, Pat, for coming and being willing to share this really great information about this wonderful conference and the new Renewable Energy Track.
Right, so Radically Rural, this is the second year of the summit, and it's really innovative because we don't have a big conference center in Keene, and what Radically Rural does is it divides it up into different the tracks into different locations around Keene, but then we all get together at the Colonial Theater at certain points during the summit, and it's 2 days, a Thursday, September 19th, and Friday, September 20th, which is also the Climate Strike Day, everybody. And it's exciting because it's about creating a rural renaissance. Studies have shown that while jobs in urban areas have increased something like 10% since the financial collapse, jobs in rural areas have not kept pace. In fact, they're still down.
And so can you tell us, so everyone knows, who's really behind this? Before we get too far into this, let's give some credit where credit is due.
So Hannah Grimes, the Hannah Grimes Center, this was a brainchild of Marianne Christensen, and she has a lot of brainy ideas.
Oh, great.
This is a really great one because it really looks at all the different features of our rural communities that can be highlighted and grown and developed to make life richer for everybody who's here, and also create job opportunities, to bring young people back to our rural communities, whether it's for farming or for other reasons. So for instance, there's an arts and culture track, and just walking around Keene, you can see what rural arts and culture is really about, between the wall dogs.
Yeah, and I mean, we know that Hannah Grimes believes in the arts and culture because they even have their marketplace where they, sell things from, really beautiful art and craftsmanship of our local, artists.
Right, and it's been very effective, and I think it's really caught fire here in Keene. And then there's a track on entrepreneurship. How do you get your business started? And there's, in Keene, we know that we have local funding sources. The local crowd helps fund a lot of new initiatives.
And Hannah Grimes actually does too, right?
It does.
So they have that pitchfork.
They have the pitchfork, which is part of that session, that track, the entrepreneur track. There'll be a pitchfork pitch as part of that, in contest with prizes. I think $10,000 is the top prize.
Yeah. So just a little bit about that pitchfork. It's where people, entrepreneurs, come and they pitch their idea. Kind of maybe it's like a local small town Shark Tank. Maybe if people want to get an idea about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Okay.
It's really exciting. And then journalism, because journalism is a challenge for small communities, keeping your papers going and relevant, being able to hire enough reporters and to present the perspective on the news and the local happenings that people in rural communities are going to care about. So last year, as part of the journalism track, the participants actually helped lay out a page, lay out an issue. It was a hands-on experience, so I don't know the details, but I expect that it will be equally exciting this year. And then Main Street that track is about how, for the business owners and the people living along a main street, how do you make your main street vital? How do you make your main street a destination for people?
So this is maybe thinking about tourism, right?
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
if a city, if a small city, if a town can revitalize itself and get tourism, then tourism can be part of the dollars that kind of awaken.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
And you can see that in Keene. You can see how those different tracks, whether it's entrepreneurship or journalism or Main Street, and arts and culture, how they all play together. You know, the arts and culture that you offer make your main streets more attractive and more of a destination.
Just thinking about the wall dogs.
Exactly.
You know, when we
Exactly.
just think about what happened recently, all of those murals, you know, just walking around Keene now, it's a destination just to look at those,
Right.
and it's going to draw people, you know, from even from the surrounding areas
Right.
to take a day or maybe take a weekend and enjoy it. So,
Right.
and that's a little bit of the arts and culture,
Right.
you know,
And-
part of it.
And as we know at the farmers market, we were talking to people about it, you know,
Yeah.
that there's a sign that says the Magical History Tour,
Yeah.
you know, with all these wall dog murals
Yeah.
for people to see. And so the fifth one is Working Lands, which is really aimed towards agricultural interests, whether it's, in fact, the first session, I just want a little aside. The great part about being part of Radically Rural is, you know, knowing all the excitement and all the different ideas and the kind of people that we're attracting to this summit, you know, the chance to mingle with them. As a track leader, the sad part is that there are all these other tracks. I love my track, but there are all these other tracks that I would love to be able to go to those sessions too. You know, so it's a little hard in that way, and people can mix and match tracks. But the Working Lands, one of their first tracks is about agriculture and climate change, and you know.
So they're having a session on that.
Exactly, which I think will be amazing, and I think that's, you know, we think of, you know, we have few people in a rural state like New Hampshire, few people but lots of land, and that's actually, as we face this climate crisis, that's really a kind of wealth, that we have this land that can be used to sequester carbon, that can be used to site renewable energy, and you know, in much larger quantities than in urban areas. So, and the agricultural track, they'll be talking about, you know, solar for farmers and how they can coexist. You can have a solar field where you still have animals grazing underneath the solar panels, or you can create a pollinator habitat under your solar panels. So there's a lot of potential for growth there, and it's really, I think it's the coming thing in terms of the wealth of living in a rural area. Now, for the first time this year, we have the Renewable Energy Track, and I'm absolutely thrilled that that they just, Hannah Grimes elected to include that this year, and very pleased that I'm able to help. And of course, the first thing that occurred to me was to talk about weatherization and energy efficiency.
Yeah, and that's really so important.
Right.
Because rural communities are paying more.
Right. So in a rural community, rural families in general pay about 33% more of their available income for energy than urban families. And that's because if you live in an urban area, there's likely to be public transportation. So you don't have the burden of driving long distances and maybe having an older vehicle to get to work. You know, you can take public transportation, and that eases some of that energy burden. And also our housing stock tends to be older and leakier. And so the very first session that we're going to have is Bridging the Rural Efficiency Gap, Energy Efficiency Gap, with Sarah Brock from the Upper Valleys, Vital Communities. Sarah Brock has done some amazing work. She's worked with the Island Institute out of Maine to actually quantify that, come up with that 33% they studied.
To see how much rural communities are spending
Right.
on that energy, and really see that
Right.
there is this really big gap.
Right, right, and it's to me it's an environmental justice issue that people living in rural communities and low-income people too, in general, don't have access to the weatherization services that are more available in an urban area. So even if you have the money, even if you have the good intention, it's often hard to find the contractors in rural communities to do that work. You know, the good news is that our unemployment rate is very low. The bad news is that our unemployment rate is very low.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's hard
So,
to
yeah.
attract people to do a lot of these jobs. And I'm excited about Sarah Brock coming because she's looking at solutions like circuit riders. You know, where
So what is a circuit rider? So, you know, let people know, what is this person going to do and why are they so important in rural communities?
right. So a circuit rider basically is somebody who travels. Their job takes them from community to community, where they're, you know, instead of like working in an urban area where they're, you know, typically thousands of people for them to work with. A circuit rider has to go find those audiences in those communities, and they help put together packages for communities to get weatherization work done, or solar, like the Solarized Monadnock project too. In more remote communities, it might not be a solarized team that stays on the ground in one community. They might actually be circuit riders and move from small town to small town.
So what happens is that in these rural communities, it's not worth it for these companies to come in and do this weatherization or install these solar arrays. So these circuit riders go from town to town to town and assemble enough work, and then go to the contractor and says, hey, look at all this work I have in this area. Now it's worth it for you to travel this distance and do all of this work.
Yep, that's
and without that, these companies aren't going to go into these rural communities, into these small towns.
Nor do the people in those small towns know what's necessarily available to them.
Yeah, so this circuit rider is really doing two jobs. They're going and they're educating these communities what's available to you, what kind of help can you get to weatherize, what kind of help you might be able to get to put in solar, to put into renewables, to help you be more energy efficient. And then they go and they help set it up for them as well.
Exactly.
So they're a really vital tool to answer these problems for these people that are really kind of, they're separated.
Exactly.
Right? And really that gap is if they're sitting over a crevasse and they need a bridge.
Exactly.
So these riders are this bridge. They're putting up this bridge for them.
Exactly. And a human bridge, if you would.
Yeah.
So, and then the second session is really about EVs and the future of EVs.
So
and
electric vehicles.
Electric vehicles. And you're actually, you helped set up a lot of this, so you probably know better than I do about, because you've been so involved in the whole EV effort for the Monadnock Energy Hub. But we do have some exciting people from Union of Concerned Scientists and people who, also Charlotte Ansell from Eversource, who has at the Energy Week breakfast in Concord announced that they had I don't know, $1 million or a couple of $1 million that they were going to invest in electric vehicle chargers and creating a network of chargers out to southwestern New Hampshire. So, which is really exciting because
So charge stations.
charging
And so
stations,
so this whole idea of make ready,
right?
right? So when we think about charging stations, we have to think about what the utilities are going to have to do to bring the power to the stations that are sufficient for fast chargers, right?
Right, exactly.
Because that's a whole different animal.
Yeah, because we, really, to support tourism, you really do need fast charges. You need no more than the time it takes to have a cup of coffee and use the restroom on your trip. Like it can't be, 4 hours waiting for something to charge. It has to be quick.
Yeah. So most of the charging stations in the state of New Hampshire are a slower, so it would take 6 to 8 hours if you were really low. So if your all-electric vehicle was almost out of charge, and a DC fast charger is going to let them charge up. Maybe it could be 20 to 40 minutes, though, depending upon how low.
Still,
But if you site it well, like maybe if they had one in Keene.
Right, at the co-op, people could go in for a cup of coffee and do a little shopping.
Do a little shopping, or maybe they could go onto Main Street and have lunch or dinner.
Exactly.
Come back, and they wouldn't feel like they've wasted their time. They've done something with it.
Right, exactly.
And go on their way.
Yeah.
So the utilities are going to be so vital in teaming up with the different entities that are going to put the stations in. I think it's fantastic to hear that Charlotte's going to be speaking at.
I'm very excited about that.
At that session. It's so important to hear what Eversource is going to have to say, because they're the big utility in our state, really. We do have others. I don't want to ignore them.
Right. And so that's Thursday's program on the 19th. And then at the end of the day is a Connect event that will happen at Keene State College and the Young Student Center. And basically, it will be art installations and social hour, time for people to meet and greet and enjoy each other. And I'm excited that our art installation is actually an electric tractor. One of the active farmers in this area from Sun Moon Farm in Ringe, he was inspired to convert an older tractor to complete battery operation. So, there's no engine up front. There's a drive mechanism and a stack of batteries, and they have solar at the farm, so we call it a solar tractor.
Okay.
And, it's hand-painted. It's very cool. So it will be there as an art installation at the Connect event on Thursday night. And then there'll be some after parties.
I'm sure it will be quite a curiosity.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But it works, right?
It works. They use it. Yeah, they
Nice.
actually use it. Yeah.
Nice.
And then on Friday morning from 9 to 11, our third session is Ready for 100, or Get Ready for 100. It's the Crazy Good session. And
what does Ready for 100 mean, and what is the Crazy Good mean before you get started, so everyone knows?
In all the tracks, one of the 3 sessions that we're preparing is called the Crazy Good session, where you try to bring the best ideas, the best practices, frankly, what's crazy good, what you've heard of that's crazy good.
About renewable energy.
Right.
Okay.
So Ready for 100 is a Sierra Club program, a national program, to get communities to, commit to resolve to move to 100% renewable electricity. It varies a little bit, but generally by 2030.
Okay.
And to move to 100% for all thermal, for heating and transportation and everything else by 2050. So it's quite ambitious. So the first thing is the resolution, passing the resolution. And the second thing is the implementation plan. And what's great about Ready for 100 is that Sierra Club has connected all these communities all across the country. It's, I don't know, 120, 130 communities now have committed to be ready for 100%, Keene among them. And so the next step with the implementation plan, there are people ahead of you and there are people behind you in terms of cities and what they're doing. And they all have great ideas about how they plan to get to 100% renewable energy. So we can learn from them and, adapt some of their solutions to our local conditions.
So it's just a brain stock and just this beautiful sharing of ideas to push it forward.
Exactly. So we'll have a panel for that session instead of a single speaker. And the panel includes Patrick Roach from Metropolitan Area Planning Commission in Massachusetts.
Makes sense that you have a planner.
Right.
Yes.
But he actually has worked in the rural areas of Massachusetts, not so much in the urban areas.
Well, that makes sense.
And what he's been doing is preparing those communities and supporting their efforts to migrate to community choice aggregation. And what happens there is that a town or a county or a school makes a commitment to choose their own energy supplier, their own electric supplier. And communities, some have done it saying that they only want to purchase 100% renewable electricity, and they establish a contract, and there are regulations and all that, and Patrick's going to tell us about that and how you can get started. But for Keene, for instance, where we have a commitment to get to 100% renewable electricity by 2030, being able to participate in community choice aggregation is a way we can do that. And potentially benefit some of our own local producers, like hydro plants that are right in, in the Keene area.
Right in the area.
Exactly.
That sounds wonderful.
And also solar producers who are producing actually more than they need for their own uses.
They could sell it.
Right, exactly. It could be aggregated. So it's called community choice aggregation, and that will be one of the panelists.
Then the other?
The other one is really about microgrids in a way. It's but on a small scale and also emphasizing resilience. So in Sterling, Massachusetts, they have their own municipal electric light company. They're not part of like Eversource, or they have their own local utility. And that means that they buy their power from ISO New England. They buy it from the grid.
Oh, directly from the grid. So
Right.
They are their own little.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. So what they did, and they're doing more of it, but initially they installed, I think it was 2 megawatts of solar and 4 megawatts of storage. And they're able to use that to do both peak shaving, so that when they charge up that battery, and when electric power is at its highest, they don't buy from the grid.
Yes,
they
drain their batteries. We had Henry Herndon here talking about it.
Right. And they saved, in the first year, they saved their 8,000 residents something like $1 million on their electric bills by doing that. So I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, and I know that I heard the Sterling gentleman, is it?
Right.
Miss?
Sean, Yeah.
Sean, yeah, I can't remember his last name,
Yeah,
so it's just
you had
because it's a
asked
live
me.
show, right?
Yeah.
I heard him on a webinar speaking about that, and it's really moving around Massachusetts, so they're doing more and more of it.
Yeah.
And it is just really exciting because it's not only that they can save money and shave, but they can also, if the power goes away, they can shut an island off and turn it into a grid.
So-
I mean, their own little power source.
So what they're doing is that they have the emergency services buildings are connected directly to the battery, and so what happens is that if they were to lose the entire grid, if there was no power coming from ISO New England, their solution would not power all the homes, obviously, in Sterling, but it could power, that battery alone could power their emergency services building for up to 2 weeks, including vital communications.
And that really is resiliency, and it's safety.
Right.
And it's really giving that community, you know, it's like a nice little warm blanket, I think, that
Exactly.
kind of is always around you to feel like if something went wrong, I have a place to go to.
Right.
And we would have communication.
And you don't have to worry about fuel deliveries, you know, like if it's
it was
really
a generator.
bad, right.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure there'll still be people who have generators, but, you know, having the emergency services building, you know, able to run off of a bank of batteries and keep things running, keep communications going is vitally important. Yeah.
Yeah, so this sounds so exciting,
Right.
and I am really looking forward to it. And you know, some of the other tracks that you're talking about sound so interesting as well.
Right.
I think the idea of mixing and matching, it's really nice to hear that Radically Rural allows you to do that on the website.
And here's another thing that I heard of, that one family is kind of going as a team and splitting up so that each one takes a different track, and then they're all going to get together later and report in on what they learned.
That's a good idea.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
So, you know, you could team up
if you
with
have
somebody.
friends,
Right.
Yeah,
You
your
know,
friends, your family get together. You know, decide. Go to the website. It's just Radically Rural, just together, just radicallyrural.org, and you can look at all the different tracks and look at the different sessions that Pat was so nice to tell you a little bit about. And you can sign up, make your decisions, and then just share, you know, maybe even tell your friends, well, wait a minute, I want to go to these two, but they're at their same time. Will you go to this one and let me know? And then you can have an after party after the 2 days,
Right.
that weekend, get together and talk about everything that you've learned.
Yeah, and the other thing is that we're really looking, part of this whole experience is who comes. So we're really looking for people who are extremely motivated, who are movers and shakers in their communities, whether they sit on the planning commission in their town or the conservation commission or the agricultural commission. We want those people who will get radicalized at Radically Rural and bring back these great ideas for a rural renaissance to their communities and actually get it started. We're hoping that those people will be coming back as presenters in future years with the great ideas, the seeds that they planted from coming to Radically Rural. And it's Sean Hamilton, by the way.
Oh,
I
Sean
meant to-
Hamilton. Oh, okay,
from Sterling.
So we've run out of time, but you know, let anybody know that you think should come on down to Keene and visit us at Radically Rural. And I'll see you next week on Energy Matters.